Good morning, everyone. It's almost the new year. Gio, can you believe it?
Almost.
Almost, almost. Well, today's Monday, folks, and you're probably wondering what is Sorrel and Gio doing here, and where are Miss Kimberly and Mr. Zach Odie? Well, Kimberly and Zach Odie on vacation, and we're happily standing in their space, and they'll be back next Monday to create with you and make an announcement. So Gio and I are here today, and we're sinking our teeth into this phenomenal context question, which is distinguishing positive thinking from surrendering as the key to igniting massive breakthroughs in 2025. Well, Gio, I couldn't stop thinking about my years right after I graduated from high school. It was 1986, and I had just literally failed an entry test for a company I wanted to work for. I knew all the stuff, but the way I was thinking about myself and about my profession and what I knew and what I could do literally paralyzed me. I failed the test. It's as if I never went to engineering school. And I spent the better part of the rest of that year listening to a radio station, AM radio station down in Miami called WNN, Motivation on Demand. And you know what, Gio? The way we're thinking about positive thinking now, I want to say that in some way, learning to switch my thinking from what I would call being in the dumps and thinking about myself, life, and my situation negatively, just shifting that made a difference for me. But what I discovered over the course of that year is that just thinking more positively wasn't going to cut it. Something else was needed. And I think that's what's at the heart of this context we're creating, distinguishing positive thinking from surrendering to ignite real breakthroughs in life. So I'm curious to hear what your thoughts are on the matter.
Yes, I think at a point in my life, and I think in a lot of people's lives, positive thinking begins to make sense. Like having a negative outlook in life doesn't really create the results. I mean, I've got to be somewhat optimistic about the possibility of the future, so that I can take actions in direction to the goals I want. And people take actions in directions to the goals they want if they think positive about things, and they, like you said, they are able to masterfully shift the way they're seeing things. And when things happen, then I gotta look for the lesson, and I gotta look for the
Yeah.
opportunity of it. And then that's positive thinking. And Napoleon Hill wrote this book that most people on this who listen to this and on this call probably read it or heard of it, Think and Grow Rich. And he talks about positive and mental attitude. And it's critical. And without it, I mean, I've seen very few. Now, I've seen some, Sorrel, but I've gotten to know very few people who are resigned and cynical and negative who are successful. I've met some, but man, it's really 1 out of 10, 1 out of 20 who are able to master the aspects that are critical to be successful without a positive outlook in life.
Yeah.
And 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 yet, even though they are successful in their own right, they are not quite enjoying their lives, because their outlook of life is not quite, the philosophy of life is not quite where they allows them to enjoy the things that they have created for themselves. But this conversation is useful in the context that most people are at the level of positive thinking. They kind of sort of have mastered that. They have a good outlook. They say things happen for a reason. They're normally they are in some degree okay with the ruthless that sometimes life is. And they know
Yeah.
how to deal with that, but they don't get the results they want.
Yeah.
They
And
become, I'll say one more thing. I'll say one more thing. They
yeah.
become really good at tolerating the results they want. And that's where I was most of my life until I discovered surrender, which is different. Go ahead, Sorel.
Gio, I just want to corroborate what you're saying by going back to my own life during that year, 1986, 1987. There was that period where my outlook on life, having quote unquote graduated from college and then failing an entry test and really thinking about myself in a way that wasn't working, it left me miserable. But here's what happened when I started thinking positively and practiced that over time, I would feel better. But that good feeling would subside and away because you're right, I wasn't getting any result. The results were no different. I was just feeling better and still, leading quote unquote a mediocre life. So you are right. Something else is necessary. And I too discovered what surrender looks like. And as I'm thinking about it, Gio, there are two things that come into play. One, I'm asking myself the question. So there is a question, what is it to surrender? And then there's the question, what is it am I surrendering to that actually leaves me in action in a way that propels my life and myself forward? And you're right, very few people are able to propel themselves forward until they discover surrender.
Yes, yes. So I want to say a little bit more about positive thinking, and so that we can distinguish it a little better, and then we go into surrendering, and so then we can distinguish it, and then maybe we can hear from
Yeah.
some people in the room, and we look at the comments on YouTube, and we'd love to hear from all of you. How have you made the transition from positive thinking to surrender, or if you haven't yet? Or in the degree that your outlook of life is very negative, then you could see, oh, I see why I'm not getting the results I want. So one of the aspects about that, the reason why I want to create a little bit more with you around positive thinking is because most of my life I was there, Sorel.
Yeah.
Most of my life, up until not long ago, Sorel, maybe 7 years ago or something, 8 years ago, I wasn't getting the results I wanted in my life, but I really was a great human being in the context of being positive. If you had me for coffee, I'd be fun around you. If you told me your problems, I would say, well, let's look at it differently. And I knew how to, in some degree, understand life and myself a little bit and circumstances in such a way that I was, for the most part, getting the philosophy right to be alive. Because I mean, what's the point of regretting life, or what's the point of punishing myself from not having my results, and what's the point of punishing oneself for not getting the results that one wants? That's a terrible way to look at life. So I wasn't. So I had mastered positive thinking, not results. That's different, completely different, Sorel. And
Yeah.
when I look at my friends and the people around me, and they weren't getting the results they wanted, and they were saying things like, well, that's how life is. Things happen for a reason. Not successes for not for everyone. They got people get lucky. I'm not. I gotta start all over. I'm gonna take I look at a different idea. They will go back and forth, starting new business adventures. That life remains the same, and people what I've noticed, and I certainly saw it for myself, Sorel, I want to make this distinction. Positive thinking begins to sneak up in such a way for most people where they collide or collapse positive thinking with resignation. They become resigned. And so I noticed it for myself, and I noticed it in others, Sorel. And now, as in the coaching I do, I can see it a lot more for myself and for others. That this positive outlook in life, it's a cover up, it's a front for resignation. Like, I won't move my life around. I won't turn it around. I hate what I do for the last 10 years, but I won't do something different because everything is okay, you see? So I wanted to, like,
Yeah,
sorry, poke a
totally
little bit
get the
more.
piece, Gio. It's like positive thinking is this two-edged thing. One edge is that in life, I'll stay miserable unless I shift my outlook, the way I see myself, the way I see my circumstances, the way I see the world, the way I see life itself, right? And yet, if I, in this conversation, what we're saying is that getting there isn't enough because it won't drive me to be in action consistently enough to produce the results I want. It's almost as if, as I'm feeling bad about life and about myself, I think positively and it does something in my brain that secretes the right chemical and I feel good. And then I stop there. So
Yeah.
I
And
think,
we're saying there's nothing wrong with that. I
yeah,
mean,
there's
at
nothing wrong
least
with
you're
that.
positive about life. It's okay. You know, there's nothing wrong with that. We're saying is that for some of us, some people who are listening, you want a little bit more out of yourself. You want a little bit more out of life. And they haven't distinguished that positive thinking has become the cover up for being resigned.
Yeah.
So we want to make that transition to from positive thinking, which is good and is positive and is powerful, to surrender. And that's the next, in some degree, to this, the next step for the opportunity of what one wants out of life. Yeah, that's what I wanted to say.
To not close this conversation, but to make the bridge to the next stage of the conversation. It's like positive thinking is a prerequisite to actually living a good life. And yet
I,
it's not the only thing. And if you're not careful, positive thinking itself becomes the thing that keeps you from moving forward because it masks your resignation. It
yes,
masks the fact that you're tolerating the results you're getting in life. It masks the fact that after this good feeling, after you do the affirmations, that you are the same human being with the same life, the same results. So, what do you say is surrender, Joe? How did you discover it?
well, I'm going to leave the definition of surrender to the professionals of definitions of surrender. But I want to use Beethoven's, the music, the great artist, the musician Beethoven,
Yeah.
as an example of surrendering, and then we can use that example to map it to our lives, to everything that we're up to in life, right? To the business and to the entrepreneur idea, etc. So Beethoven wasn't like a poster child for positive thinking in the traditional sense. He faced unimaginable challenges. He lost his hearings, arguably the most vital sense, for a composer. Yet he didn't stop and he wasn't thinking positive about it. He surrendered to the reality of his situation, of his limitations, and find a way to channel his genius through them. So at the end of his life, he embraced the vibrations of the piano so he could feel the notes resonate through his body. He wasn't, I would argue, Sorel, based on what I have read about him, and I've been kind of fascinated about his life since I was very young. I would argue, Sorel, that he wasn't hoping for the best. He wasn't hoping for this incredible life or this outlook of life. He surrendered to his craft, to his passion, to his purpose, and allowed him to create one of the most beautiful masterpieces, which is the Ninth Symphony, while he was completely deaf, or at least that's how they write um, when he was writing it, when he did it. And I think inside of our business, Sorel, and inside of our life, there is a way to look at what we do, the whole entire thing of it, and surrender to it. It's in my way of saying it, Sorel, is become the thing you're working on. Like become it. And it doesn't, you don't have to be in love with what you do. You don't have to be doing your life's purpose. You could do this at your job. To make the transition from positive thinking to surrender is this mindset attitude, if you will, that you surrender to what you do. You don't have to love it. You're surrendering. You become the very thing you're doing. And in the context of business, you become your clients, you become your suppliers, you become your employees, you become your products. You enter the field of it all. You surrender to it. And it allows you to see things you can't see before. It allows you to predict things you can't predict before. And it also allows you to deal with massive setbacks at the level where you're in, at the conscious level that you're in, and
Mhm.
still find purpose in them because it's part of it all. So that's how I want to introduce the opportunity of
Yeah,
surrender
and
to what you're doing.
I love the way we're swimming in this question, giving ourselves a permission to not know where it's going. And yet, here's what I'm hearing, Gio: to surrender, maybe, and I'm not going to traffic in the realms of the people who are the experts at defining surrender, but to surrender is to actually be with where you are, with what's there, with the circumstances. Because in the world I was prior to positive
All
thinking,
of it.
all of
Like
it,
I mean all of it. I don't mean just the present. I mean all
yeah,
of it. Surrender to your industry.
yeah,
Surrender to your clients. Surrender to all of it. Go ahead, sorry.
yeah. And in the process, it actually takes me over and puts me in a realm where it's not that I don't have an interest in working on myself and fixing myself. It's that which I surrender to takes over. And it's not that I'm not thinking about the flaws I have, all that, but they're not a priority anymore because I have surrendered to what's to all of it. And the actions I take end up being consistent to what I surrender to. The results I get end up being consistent to those actions that are consistent and correlated to what I've surrendered to. So, what you surrender to gives you the life you have. And what you surrender to gives you the results you have in life. And I would even say,
Yeah.
now that I'm seeing what I surrender to gives me the quality of my relationships and the quality of my life, even.
Yeah, it certainly gets you results in that which you surrender. I for most of my life, Sorel, I don't, as a business coach and in many ways as a life coach for many people, I don't I don't traffic in the world of discipline, Sorel. Like you've got to be disciplined. I don't traffic in the world of do the right thing. I don't traffic in the world of that. I traffic in the world. How connected are you with what you're doing? How emotionally connected you are. And of course, I take a good look personally. I take a good look at how people are, the context in which they see their life, the outlook. Are they positive thinking? I don't want people to live like Beethoven. He created this massive masterpiece for the rest of their lives, and Beethoven, it is written that he had a miserable life. No, I don't want people to have a miserable life and create a legacy for the rest for humanity. What I mean, what's the point? But however, surrendering to that which you're committed to your business, to your family, to the things that you care about, does leave you disciplined. It does leave you waking up at 4 in the morning and going to bed at 12 o'clock. But you're no longer working. You're no longer putting the hours. You're no longer sacrificing your favorite Netflix, series. You're no longer in the world of sacrifice. You're no longer in the world of hard work. You have surrendered to something you're passionate about. And then in the context of surrendering, you start measuring, which is critical, measuring your results. You start measuring in the world of business. I'm going to use an acronym for business, your key performing indicators. You start hiring Tara. So like Tara has a workshop coming up soon, which is, how to master, how to craft your story. Then in the world of surrender, you start like looking at Tara like, well, how the hell do I share my story that I'm passionate about so that people connect to? Because you're passionate about the goddamn story that you are about, not because you're trying to sell it to somebody and become famous and go viral and have 1 million likes and have no money in your bank account. It's a whole different aspect, and I'm getting passionate about it.
Oh, yeah. You're surrendering to it.
I'm surrendering to it. Yeah. So I stopped.
You're surrendering to this conversation. Gio, I'd love to bring a couple of other people in, but I want you to take 1 minute, because as you were speaking, I couldn't help but be with this question, which is, well, I get it. I get that surrendering will give me all of that. But Gio, how do I surrender? What do you want to say about that? How do I surrender? What is it to surrender to all of it? How do I actually go into that space?
Sorrel, that's a big question. So that's a big question. And I would say it does take something, given, depending on where people are, Sorrel, it does take something to let go that resignation masked by positive thinking, if you will, that a lot of people find themselves in, right? And so, but I'm going to do something now I'm thinking about. You and I and Sheila and Rita Williams are doing a workshop on January 17th that I would love for all of you guys to attend if you guys are in Atlanta, where we're going to be hanging out one whole day on surrendering, and surrendering to 2025, surrendering to your craft, surrendering to yourself. And then there will be if you will, the step-by-step process of shifting one mindset to surrender, right? But the simplest way to answer this question, which I hate what I'm about to say, the way to surrender is to let go who you say you have been. Allow yourself to die in the way you have been being in life. Because when one allows oneself to kill something, to die in some degree, something new is born inside of a person.
Yeah.
And so each person knows what needs to die. I don't know what it is.
Yeah. And perhaps it is the dying of that which I have been that creates the space for my passion to birth. Thank you, Gio. We'd love to hear from you. Raise your hand if you want to make a question, have a question, make a comment, and put your 2 cents into this space to distinguish positive thinking from surrender as access to igniting massive breakthroughs in 2025.
Yeah, what are your thoughts, comments, questions, takeaways? Tara, what is your brain saying right now?
My brain's trying to get me off mute. One step at a time this morning. I love this topic, and I will tell you that when you first approached it, I think of positive thinking very differently than you. When I think of positive thinking, I think it means that you believe that you can go for gold, that you can reach higher, that you believe in your progress and your ability, and it causes you to be very driven. And so to me, when that, like, thinking positively, I think that's a very powerful thing, unless you don't have anything concrete to believe that you can take these great steps. But what you're telling me, this is what I'm hearing from you guys, is that you're talking about trying to look at things in your life that you're not satisfied with through rose-colored glasses. Like, it's okay, things could be so much worse. I'm still going to be positive and happy. And I think that is potentially damaging to our mental health. I truly do, because it dismisses that, no, we want better for our families. We want nicer vacations. We want more time together. We want whatever it is that we want. It's almost like we can't expect those things because then we're not thinking positively. So I like the idea of surrendering, because to me, when we surrender to our truth, that's freedom. And that to me is energy to strive for more, which is how I look at positive thinking. So I don't know if that was answering any question you have, but that's what's coming up for me this morning.
Yeah, thank you for creating that. One of the things you said, to us, surrendering to our truth, as we were unpeeling the onion in this conversation, I started to look at surrender from this perspective, that to surrender to something, anything, maybe I actually have to say what I'm going to surrender to, you know?
No.
From the context that positive thinking creates as a springboard, or at least a door to causing breakthroughs in life, I can now say something that I'm going to surrender to.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I surrender to being XYZ. I surrender to all of it, just the way it is, just the way it's not. And then I also surrender to whatever plan of action I create that's consistent with that. And then the one thing that I love surrendering to, that I discovered, Gio and Tara and everyone, is my calendar. Like, I have this thing that I want to accomplish. It's a big goal. I make a plan to accomplish it, and then I put occasions on my calendar. And then surrendering to that, even when I don't want to do that thing, to just pick myself up and go there. And over time, that's built something in me, Gio and Tara. It's like I feel strong. I know myself to be strong that way, to be able to just surrender to my calendar, surrender to my plans of actions, surrender to what I say I want.
As opposed to what? When you say surrender to your calendar, as opposed to like not being disciplined to follow your plan?
Not so much not being disciplined. It's more like there's so many things that show up for me to do that are just as good to do as what I have on my calendar that's consistent with what I say I want. So it's that kind of surrendering.
Okay.
Yeah. Different from discipline. Gio, I love this conversation. We could stay in it for a good while.
Yeah. Thank you, Sorel. Yeah, thank you, Tara, for sharing your thoughts. And I can see what you are saying, that you see it differently for sure. I think the way you see positive thinking is the way I'm pointing to surrendering. And I think what when I think what I want to say to kind of end the loop for me, right? And this is a great conversation to continue, is that I look at a lot of people I know and friends and people I love that really want more out of life. They really want more. And they can't help but to settle for what they have. And nothing wrong with what they have, but they want more. They want more. They want a little bit more. They want a little more juice out of life. And what I mean to surrender is to, at some point give voice, language, write down what is it that you really want, as an expression of yourself to life and surrender to it. Surrender to that. And what I find is that the transition, painful transition in some ways, for most of us, becomes the best thing ever happened to you. It doesn't matter if you lose half of your retirement, because that which you do with conviction, you will never regret. You know? So anyway, that's what I wanted to say about that.
Yeah, and you know, at the risk of wrapping it up into a nice little gift with a bow on it and oversimplifying it, I want to say that positive thinking got me out of a really dark hole in 1986, and I'm grateful for it. Grateful for all the authors like Jim Rohn, people who wrote The Power of Positive Thinking, Norman Vincent Peale, you know, one of my idols, Mr. Tony Robbins, you know, you name them, right?
Les Brown.
I'm grateful for all of that. And yet I did discover, Gio, that positive thinking in and of itself is not enough. It can create that mask that leaves me appeased, so to speak, and resigned in a very peaceful way that I'm a good person. I think positively. Life's not just coming my way. And that may not be where you are, but this is the warning that we're sounding. Don't let positive thinking be that which masks your resignation to life and everything. Look in the direction of surrendering to life itself, something you say, something you want, the actions you say you're going to take, and taking those actions in a way that leaves you living. Like you may fail miserably, but you have lived. So on that note, Gio, that's where we end.
Yeah.
Love, surrender to it. Surrender to love. Surrender to stressing less. Stress less. I mean, gosh, it's only one life. For God's sake, the year is gone. Leave it behind you. Let's go into 2025. Stressing less. Surrendering to eating mostly plant-based. Watch your skin get smoother. Watch your eyes get clearer. Watch your muscles get stronger. Give. Give of yourself. Give of your life. Give of everything you have. Dance wildly. Move your body. Sleep. Get some rest. And last but not least, check your assumptions. Just when you think you're right, maybe you're wrong. This is your Daily Huddle for today. We'll be back here with Miss Tara Heaton tomorrow morning, New Year's Eve, right here on the same channel. You can find us on YouTube at the Daily Huddle and here on Zoom if you choose to join us here. Gio loves you. The Daily Huddle family loves you more.